evening, everyone. Good evening and welcome back. Welcome back to the PorscheCooled podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things Porsche. Steve is here. Hi, Steve.
There you go.
Should change that introduction, shouldn't I? I do that same introduction every week. Steve is here.
I don't know. Some people...
I'll think of something new. I will think of something new.
Some people like familiarity. I'm a creature of, a routine person, so it makes me feel good. Makes me feel safe.
I remember years ago someone said that. They said, they said to me, this is a really awful thing to say to someone, but I'm going to repeat it. They said, you'll never get anywhere in life because you just like routine. And
wow.
You're not willing to take any risk. That's what they told me.
Wow.
And that was someone someone very well known. That I won't say who it is, but that was someone very well known at the time in the fashion industry in Australia. As a lot of the listeners might know, I worked in the fashion industry, but that was someone quite famous that I worked for quite some time, and traveled with a lot.
I know who it is. Yep.
And said that to me. So that was nice. That was a nice thing to say. We obviously fell out after that. Yeah. So that wasn't any good motivation. But anyway, we won't talk about that. Hey. So I saw. First, let's get into the first thing because I want to talk about this. I want to talk about your drive, and then we'll get into the usual things we start off with. But I just want to start off with the drive because Marco did actually send me. He sent me a picture of the drive that you. Yeah, he sent me a picture of the drive that you two guys went on. You went on with your uncle as well, right? But the two cars.
My uncle was a passenger. Yep.
Yeah. So he sent me a picture of. I posted it on PorscheCooled actually. I reposted it. I reposted one of the photos. I reposted one of the photos that he put on his Instagram, but he sent me some other photos. I think they might have been slightly different. But it's interesting, I thought it was really interesting. And for those of the listeners who don't know what we're talking about, Steve's cousin-in-law just bought a speed yellow 996 turbo 996.2, right?
Yep. No.
0.1?
Is it? 0.1.
0.1. And seeing it with your GT3, Steve, the rears,
yes. Yep.
They're different, but then they look so similar in a way. They're so like it's so fat. When you see that picture, it's like, wow, they're not that far removed, are they? When you look at them, it was kind of weird.
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah,
because I've never really gotten up. Oh no, I have. I've never really gotten up close, I was about to say, to a 996 turbo, but then I guess it's the reference point of having my car alongside, and I know exactly what you mean. Like, it doesn't actually, you kind of think, 996, like, it doesn't look that good, and 997, it looks great. But when you see them side by side and you see the evolution of the shape, they're not that far apart.
No,
they're really not that far apart.
They're not, considering one's a 996 and one's a 997. In fact, the 996...
I guess they were built on the same platform. So the hard points would be the same.
Yeah, true. I showed Tasha and she thought she said, wow, it looks so wide. The 996,
the turbo?
Yeah, it looks so wide at the back.
Yeah, it is, I guess, yeah.
But I don't think it's any wider than yours, is it?
I don't know. Technically it should be, obviously, because it is a wide body, and a GT3 in a 997.1 is a narrow body. But, yeah. Don't know. It's cool. It's really cool. I really like it.
Yeah, no, it looks good. Let's get onto that drive. I want you to tell me more about the drive and how it was following it and what else happened. Was there much interesting?
I didn't. No, so that bit's not going to get that interesting, but that's okay. Marco actually hadn't sort of been on a massive blast since he got the car. I'm amazed that I would have just kind of gone somewhere stupid the first day in it, but he had been a very patient man, so that was his first, sort of, kind of twisty drive. And he wasn't familiar with that sort of trip down south, so he followed me the whole time. I never chased him.
Okay.
So it was good. Look, we went out on a Sunday morning pretty early, but we took it relatively easy. Marco sort of, I know he'll probably listen to this too.
So how was Marco? Was he comfortable with driving it, or was he still being quite cautious?
Yeah, I think he was probably taking it a little bit easy because it was, his maiden sort of fang as such. And I think also he had his father-in-law in the passenger seat. I don't know if that sort of made a difference or not, but I know if that was me, or even if my uncle kind of sat with me and we were going on that drive, I'd probably try to be a little bit more respectful because I know I hate being a passenger.
Yeah.
You know, in a car, sort of kind of going for a fang.
Yeah,
So.
it's going to be good. Hopefully we can organise a drive when I get back. It's going to be interesting following a turbo and a GT3. I don't know if I can keep up, but it's going to be an interesting sight, that's for sure.
To be honest, like we were going at a decent, a pace decent, which is a decent amount slower than what you and I would do.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
it wasn't... also because Marco inherited a little issue with this turbo. It's kind of on... I mentioned it before. It's on JIC suspension.
Right.
Coilovers.
Right.
And it was picked up in the PPI that it sort of rubs inside the... the wheel arch liners.
Okay.
So he needs...
Why is that? Because it's too low, Steve?
Yeah, they noted that on Chris at Autohouse, who he was talking to, said that you'll rub on full lock. And yeah, and you can tell because when they literally got underneath the car, the wheel arch liners are worn. So he's basically got to reset the suspension. I don't know if it's... That's sort of what I said to him. I'm kind of curious to see how he approaches it, whether or not that means raising the ride height or whether some of the geometry is not quite right or something.
So
like
did
that.
you tell him to take it to Heasman's?
No, I mentioned Heasman's to him, but Autohouse can... I also think that Autohouse are pretty good with their suspension setup, so they've always looked after me. So
Yeah, Tim did mine when he did the alignment that time, and he set it up really, really well. In fact, when they do it again, because they have to realign my car again when they fix the steering rack, they said once they do the steering, and they said it was pulling a little bit to the right, the front of the wheel anyway. But I want
Did you notice that?
To be really honest, I noticed it almost straight after they did the alignment.
Okay.
And I mentioned it to them, and they said it's probably just the road when I mentioned it to them.
Oh, okay.
But then this time, Chris said that, it's pulling a bit to the right. So,
Under braking or?
Just when I'm driving. Not a lot, like so minimal. Yeah. So minimal that you don't know whether it is the angle of the road. You know what I mean? Like you don't really know.
Just
because
the camber in the road.
Yeah, because it's such a small amount, Steve. And I remember bringing it up when probably a month after they did the alignment. And they said, it's probably just the road. And then, but this time around, maybe it's got out a bit more. Maybe it's thrown out more. But it doesn't feel that bad to me. It's just minimal.
The reason why I asked that is that occasionally they've sort of said to me, hey, like your steering wheel isn't quite straight or just something like that. And it's like, oh, wow, I didn't even notice it. It didn't occur to me until they actually kind of flagged something with the car.
I guess when they fix, my steering rack, for people that don't know, it's got a leak and it's got to be reconditioned. But I guess when they fix that, it'll get the alignment and then I'll make sure it's exactly right. But what I was going to say is I want them to set it up how Tim set it up last time because it's always felt good in that setup, which I told him that, don't drive a lot around the city, not really a daily driver. I just want it set up. I think you told me, I asked you actually, and you said to tell him what to say. Yeah. And I just said I wanted it for spirited driving. So he set it up in a particular way and he knew exactly what to do. And it always felt great on those roads, always felt great.
I didn't sort of say this is as explicitly to Marco, but I was about to, and I know he's listening again, or I'm pretty sure he'll be listening, but I just sort of found that, like, there are some people that are really technical and can start sort of saying, I think it needs a little bit more toe in and this and that, blah, blah, blah. I'm obviously not like that, but I've always found that if you just sort of say to particularly Grant, this is how I'm using the car, this is what I've noticed, can you have a look at it? He's really good at interpreting, what you're actually kind of after, and then he'll translate that to a suspension setup. Without fail, pretty much most times he's really nailed it, which is sort of why I've never felt the need to kind of go to somebody like Heasman's or Dave at East Coast Suspension.
Yeah, because you don't want to get too technical. I don't know what all those degrees and whatever they are. I don't know how they all work. I just know it felt right, and that was the main thing.
Yeah, I understand a little bit of it in theory, but I don't think, I'm not kind of in tune enough to kind of go, because I hit this bump at this speed and this sort of happened, that therefore, my toe-in's wrong, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, the toe-in, that's right. Let me just go back, Steve, for a bit. Let me just introduce, I just want to say thank you to another Patreon member that joined, I think it was yesterday. I just want to say thanks to James. I don't know where James is from, and I don't know whether he owns a 911 as yet, but thanks for joining PorscheCooled, James. And I just want to go back to last week. Thank you, James. I just want to go back to last week where I did a call out, and I always do a call out for new Patreon members, and Patreon is where you guys can support the podcast. Steve knows all about it. You just go to patreon.com/PorscheCooled. You can pay $2 a month, you can pay $5 a month, you can pay $10 a month, which really helps us just to keep talking. And last week, Vasilis joined. I still don't know whether I'm pronouncing it right, Vasilis. I hope I am, Vasilis. Vasilis is originally from Greece. He does live in Rome, and he's looking to getting another 911. He's had Porsches before, I think. So I just wanted to say another shout out to Vasilis because last week I didn't know much about him, but he does live in Rome, and he is originally from Athens, I think.
Yeah, cool. Nice one. Just before we kind of go on, so just on that drive too, curiously, we met in the car park at Audley Weir, just after Audley Weir, where that little kind of dip is.
Audley Weir.
And
that awful dip in the road.
Yeah. Where undoubtedly you're going to scrape.
Where you always scrape. I can hear it in the car out the window. I hear Steve scraping.
And it makes all of us wince every time it happens. Yeah. So I was pulling out of the car park, and as I was, because I was in front, and just as I was about to pull out, a black 997S, Carrera S, nice. And how do I know that? Because that was literally the number plate, 997S.
Good plate.
Just sort of rolled along, so flashed his lights, told me to kind of go first, then pulled in between Marco and I. And I sort of felt bad. It's like, oh, okay, so if I kind of hoon off and I lose Marco, then I won't do that. So he kind of pass me.
Maybe he listens to the podcast and he recognized you. He knew who you were.
Well, he was a young guy. Like, in the end, we were sort of, he was in front. I had to kind of pull back because I kept sort of losing Marco, and I didn't really want to just sort of completely kind of lose him because he hadn't been down that road before.
Right.
But we wound up kind of pulling up at the Scarborough Hotel, and black Carrera S997 guy sort of came out and had a little bit of a chat. He wanted to have a look at my car, and had a chat with Marco and about his car as well. So cool. It's funny, like, again, you know what I'm like, massive introvert, don't really talk to strangers much. Very awkward.
How long had he owned the 997 for?
I think he said 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
He wasn't an Asian guy, was he?
No, no. Just a youngish guy with, I think, his girlfriend. Said that he'd had it for 4 years. Then he sort of said, I want one like yours. Hey, have you seen the one at Autohouse? There's the white GT3 that's sitting there.
I was going to ask you about that car, actually. I'm glad you brought that up. Why hasn't that one at Autohouse is... How do I say it? It puzzles me a little bit because I really don't like the idea of a GT3 with a sunroof. And it's got a sunroof.
Does that one have a sunroof?
Yeah, it's got a sunroof, which is a bit odd because it's a touring.
It's rare in Australia.
It's a touring, for the listeners, it's a white GT3 997.1 touring of that spec, if you call it touring. It was, right? But with lightweight buckets and with a sunroof. But the price of it, the price of it is actually quite reasonable. And it's sitting, and I don't understand why it hasn't sold. Have you seen it?
I have... Yeah, I have. Oh, not in person. I've seen the ad, obviously, and I saw that it had sold quite a few months ago through the Porsche. Was it Porsche PFA, Porsche Forum Australia?
Oh, really?
Forums website. So somebody had literally just bought it, only had it for a few months, and then obviously went back through Autohouse. So I don't. Yeah, I think I can't imagine. There's not going to be anything wrong with the car because Autohouse don't deal like that. I know they sort of inspect the car, blah, blah, blah. So there'd be nothing wrong with it. As to why is it sitting there for longer? I don't know. Like, maybe... Actually, to be honest, when you think about it, there's not been that many since my mate bought his car.
There's nothing available.
Yeah, there haven't been that many cars that popped up, so you can't tell whether or not things have sort of slowed down because it's not like something came up and then sold really quickly.
For the listeners in Australia who are watching GT3s, I mean, that one at Autohouse is a pretty good one. If you can get over the sunroof thing. One, if you can get over... I'm still not sure about a sunroof in a GT3. For some reason, it just doesn't work for me. You know what I mean? I don't know. I know that shouldn't be a deal breaker, Steve, but you know the one I like?
Yeah.
And I would actually forego the lightweight buckets because of the sunroof, and I would go with the black one that's been for sale for a while with the carbon ceramics that only has 10,000 kilometers.
Just over 10,000 k. Yeah, that one's been sitting for ages, and I'm a little bit more surprised that that one sort of sat, because I don't think the price on that is that crazy for such a low mileage car.
I think it was 279,000. I think it's now, he's dropped it by 10 to 269. But if you could get that one at 250, it's got carbon ceramics, it's got xenons, obviously. It doesn't have the navigation system, which is cool. It's just got the radio, which is what you want, right?
Yep.
It doesn't have the lightweight buckets. I mean, I guess you could buy a new set from Porsche and put them in if you wanted to, or a used set.
For 20-something grand.
A used set. But there's something about that one I really do like, because it's something, it's always, I don't know, it's the black with the yellow ceramics. It's something about the black with the yellow ceramics just looks really cool. I don't know, does it got yellow seatbelts? It'd be great with yellow seatbelts too, to put the yellow seatbelts in there.
I can't remember. I know what you're saying. That car looks really cool as well. So, to answer your question as to why is the white one at Autohouse sitting for so long, I don't actually think it's sitting that long. I think it's just that the last reference point that I can think of was my mate, and that car popped up and then he bought it like a week later. So that one didn't sit that long. But I think, say the last 6 months, I don't think 997 GT3s have been sort of flying off the shelves that quickly.
Well, the thing is, you look at I don't know. You know that I looked on Porsche. I don't know if I mentioned this last week. I looked on Porsche's website for used cars. I don't normally look on their site on Australia just to see what they had. And it was surprised me how many of them weren't actually on car sales, right? And they had a GT Silver GT4 with the gold RM wheels, right? It was 208,000 new GT4.
Yep.
I looked at it on the Saturday. I went back to look at it on the Monday. Gone.
Yep. Gone?
Yeah. That white GT3 RS, the white GT3 RS for 379 that I told you about with the ceramics, very whites, with the buckets, with the yellow seat belts, 379. Gone.
Yep.
So,
So what I'm about to say is not coming from a place of authority or anything at all.
Yes, it is.
As per usual. Normal disclaimer, we're no
yes,
experts. It is. But I reckon the kind of client that goes and buys a car from the used Porsche dealership is different from other people, because they're clearly the markup on the car is clearly higher. And I can say this because of Cindy's McCann, my wife's McCann. We went and had a look, at a couple in the dealership, and it was significantly higher. And yes, you kind of walk in, they offer you a cup of coffee, they let you take it for a test drive. For me, they kind of, a sort of, talk the talk, dressed a little bit better, seeded into the conversation that I was a Porsche person, all that sort of stuff, just to kind of make sure that, they would, this sounds terrible, but kind of treat you properly, which they did. But I just reckon that, that in order, because the markup, the car, that was just a sort of an S, a McCann S, not the turbo that we wound up with. And it was still at their bottom price, it was still another 15 grand more than what I paid for the turbo.
It's interesting.
I reckon it's a particular type of person that wants that experience, that doesn't necessarily kind of know how to kind of trawl through the kind of shit that is on car sales to kind of get to a good one.
I guess, and Porsche dealers, I guess, don't advertise on all sites, but I guess sometimes though, the cars that come up at Porsche dealers, there are sometimes some special ones that come up, right?
Oh, absolutely. So
the grey,
sometimes they're better.
Yeah, the grey and red wheeled 997.2 GT3 RS that was at Porsche Sydney. That I went and looked at. In fact, I was there twice. I went and looked at it because I went there twice. I went and bought some accessories, and then I went back and looked at it again. And that sat there for ages. I don't know if you remember that, Steve. It sat there for ages. I think it went from 379 down to 349 for a 997.2 GT3 in the grey with the red. When you think about that now, it's man, that probably never come up again at that price. But I was just thinking when you were saying that about Porsche dealers, and I was thinking about Eric, who was on Owner Stories. and he, you know, how he bought the 997 from the dealer, and then he bought the Boxster from the dealer. And he liked the experience, you know, and he got, you know, the warranty in the first one. And when you hear him, when I remember, I'm just trying to, you know, fresh my memory here, but listening to Eric's story about the dealer experience, it sounded like a great experience. And he sound, you know, and
Absolutely.
it gives you that peace of mind, you know, he got warranty on the 997, you know, and then he bought the Boxster from them and they treated him, you know, so it is.
Let me re-articulate what I was trying to say too, I think, because I just realised I think that kind of came out the wrong way. I just sort of think
You hate Porsche dealers.
Undoubtedly the car, the cars that they offer are obviously kind of good ones, and because they've been sort of backed up by going through their service department, plus they'll have to kind of offer like a Porsche warranty, they will be better cars. But I think also that they're not the kind of cars for somebody that's super tight, like kind of trying to get like an absolute bargain.
Yeah,
it's the kind of person that's happy to pay the extra money, and then for sure you're going to get a better experience in terms of the customer service and all that kind of stuff.
But a lot of the time, as we know, whether it's, and we're talking about Australia here for the people listening internationally, but if it's Porsche Sydney or Porsche Willoughby, you know, they bought the car from there. Some of these people have bought multiple cars from there. They only get it serviced there. They don't go to PR Technology. They don't go to Auto House. They don't go to Central Coast Porsche, or whatever it's called, and Central Coast, whatever that one's called, Auto Works. They don't go to any of these places. All they do is just go to Porsche. So, and I think Eric said the same. You know, the car has been serviced by them. You know, you pick it up. It's got all the details, which makes you feel like you don't need to get a PPI because they've got all the records. And I guess if you're getting a warranty, you don't. So I see the benefit of not getting a PPI and getting a PPI. But you know, it's you know, for a first Porsche buyer, it's probably quite exciting buying it from a Porsche dealer. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's just that. It's like buying your car used from a Porsche dealership isn't for tight asses, basically.
No, any dealer that you're going to pay a bit of a premium, you know. Look, let's be honest.
Not necessarily.
But let's be honest, where I bought my car from in Sydney, they're not, you know, they obviously have a markup as well. You know what I mean? By the amount that they took off my car when I bought it, there was obviously a markup. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but we bought the McCann from a Land Rover Jag dealer in our time, and we got a steal. Well, I reckon we did, but I reckon we got a really good deal.
I was going to tell you, and I know people like Ajmal hates me talking about SUVs on the podcast, but there's a McCann at Scuderia Graziani, where I bought my car from in Woolloomooloo in Sydney. They've got if anyone's looking for a McCann in Sydney, they've got a night blue McCann. I just noticed there today, turbo. I think it's got 60,000 kilometres for 86 grand. I thought that was pretty good.
It's a little high, but yeah.
Really?
Not bad.
I thought it was all right.
Nice colour.
Yeah, nice colour. Night blue. I think it's got black wheels, but not the cool wheels like yours. It doesn't have those cool Fuchs type wheels like yours.
Those sport classic things.
Yeah.
And just going off what you said about SUVs, it's funny because I think I don't think I have, but I think in previous podcasts when we've been talking about my cousin-in-law Marco, I don't think I've actually ever sort of said, hey, it's his first Porsche. It's not his first Porsche. He's actually got a Cayenne as well. But it's funny how
That's what you told me. You told me it was his first Porsche.
Yeah, well, see, and it's because I don't think of a Cayenne or a Macan as a Porsche.
Sorry, all Cayenne Macan owners. Speaking of owners, let me do a shout out about owner stories this week. Have you listened to it, Steve? I can't remember if you said yes or no.
I have. I did.
And?
I did. You sent it to me.
And?
Yeah, it was cool.
Okay.
Oh, shit. Is that
You're
what
worrying
you
me. Okay, so PorscheCooled owner stories this week was a good one. Stephen from Jersey in the Channel Islands. In the podcast, I did actually say he's from London in the UK because I was stupid and it was late at night and I didn't know what I was talking about. But he's actually from Jersey in the Channel Islands. Stephen reached out to me, I think, by email. I think Ajmal and Stephen, Flat Cap Driver, they chat every now and again. Stephen had a really good history. I actually sent Steve the link today for the listeners so they can know. I sent the link of that 1972 2.4S that he had, which was...
The orange one.
Yeah, which they...
sold for whatever it was.
Yeah, which is about... I reminded him how much it would cost today. But you see it... He originally bought this 1972 911... I'm sorry, Stephen, if I get this wrong. I haven't got it all written down. 1972 911 2.4S that was... done to a 2.7, I think. And it was meant to look like an ST, I think. He bought it from Auto Farm. It was restored to look like an ST. It was in blood orange. It was in the best color. It was his first 911, his first Porsche. And it was it's a reasonably famous car as well, Steve. I don't know if you caught that. It was owned by a guy called Chris Harvey, a journalist, and it's on a cover of a book. It's also been on 911 and Porsche World. That's why I sent you the link today of that car, because that was an old ad of it.
I just looked at the pictures. I didn't
I
go through the
But I want to get back to this later in the podcast when we talk about, is speed everything, because it's kind of interesting what Stephen said to me about the reason why he chose the 912 based on where he lives. He lives in Jersey on the Channel Islands, and the Channel Islands have, low speed limits and lots of control, basically lots of, you get a lot of tickets quite easily. So you have to be careful. So I want to talk about that when we get into the later part of the podcast. But he owned that Mercedes 500e, which I told you about before. He owned a 981 Boxster. It's interesting when I talk to owners, Steve, that have bought a car new. There is, and it's like Nick in Melbourne, architect driving in Melbourne, Nick with his 991.2 Carrera. I know you pay a lot more money, but there is, both the Audis I bought them new, as you know. The first one, the A3 Turbo, I didn't spec. That was just in stock, but I got them to change the seats, and the next one I spec'd out. But there is something really special when you spec it yourself, isn't there? You spec it exactly how you want it. I know you pay the premium for it.
I've only done it twice, I think, in my own car history.
Yeah. See, Nick did that with his point two, and he got the manual, and he got no sunroof, and he spec'd it really well. And then, Stephen did it with his Boxster, his 981 Boxster. He spec'd it how he wanted it. Oh, and there was also Elliot with his 992 GT Silver Carrera S, specified optioned exactly how he wanted it as well. I have spoken to other people too. I can't remember everyone off the top of my head. Sorry, but I think it's a good thing to do. Then he's owned the other classics. He owned a couple of E30 BMW M3s. He owned the Ferrari 456, which has come up on my radar recently because there's someone I follow on Instagram who's got a Porsche in London who's also now just bought a 456. But I read they're a bit like the 355 for service. Where they're expensive.
Yeah,
I still think it's nice looking car.
They're nice looking cars.
And then Stephen has the 912, the perfect color, Irish green. I think it was built in late 68, but it's a 69 model year, 912 Irish green. He was going to take it to Auto Farm to get restored. I won't give away the whole story because no one will listen to it, but I thought it was good that he's taking it to Andy Prill at Prill Porsche Classics. And I like how he's attacked it, Steve. Like he's getting the engine completely rebuilt. He's getting, as he said, the wiring was like terrible, so it's getting all rewired, which is good. He's not touching the paint. Yeah. Andy Prill gave him one of the Prototypo original 70s wheels, or didn't give him, he probably bought it, not gave it to him. And I think it's going to be a really well-sorted 912. Even the pictures that I put on the podcast and which are coming up on the YouTube one as well, the images that he sent me, which are on Instagram actually. It's a great-looking car as it is. You know what I mean? It looks pretty...
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Irish green's obviously a very nice colour.
Yeah, so if you haven't listened...
in vogue at the moment.
Yeah, true. Anyway, for any of the listeners that haven't listened to that, that's in PorscheCooled Owner Stories number 31, which went live on Tuesday. I just want to cover the Apple ratings and reviews just very quickly, Steve. As I always say, Apple ratings and reviews, you've heard this on other podcasts, I'm sure, but it does actually help us get seen. It does help us get up the charts on Apple, on the podcast charts. And I always like to give a thank you to the people who have taken the time to give a proper review. There's 3 this week. The first one was from Vasilis, who I mentioned before, who's from Rome, Patreon member. Must hear for Porsche enthusiasts. So thank you for that, Vasilis. 5 stars. Thank you so much. I won't read them all out. I'll just read the titles. The second one was, I like the title of this one, Great Porsche Waffle. I thought that was quite good.
Tasty.
And that was from, 5 stars, and that's from the EVSY from Great Britain. So thank you for that review.
It's a very tactful way of sort of saying.
No, I like this one's better. This title's better. I like this. If you're going to leave us a review, I love these weird titles. Porsche tragic fodder. Porsche tragic fodder. So that one made me laugh, and that one is from This one is from a guy in Sydney, actually. Recently subscribed and enjoying the free-flowing format and banter. Being a local Sydney Porsche owner and enthusiast, plus a tragic market watcher. I know a lot of the guests, cars, and people discussed. It's almost like listening to mates talk over coffee. Thanks for the regularity of the episodes and keep it real. And I get the 996 and 9912... Don't listen to the haters. I think that's what he's saying. Don't listen to the haters. I think it's a typo there. And maybe a run when we're back in Sydney. And that's Tips 911 via podcast Apple Australia. So thanks for that. So 3 good reviews, Steve. Very, very good. We're getting to, I think we're almost at 100 ratings and reviews now. We're pretty close to 100. So hopefully we'll get to 100 for our 100th episode in 2 weeks. Now,
Getting old, mate.
I just want to ask you something, actually. And I listened to, I just want to point out, and Steve put me onto this podcast, which I knew nothing about, and I've never listened to it before, and I never heard of the guy before. He obviously has a lot of money. He's obviously a lot richer than me. And that's Sam.
Nobody's richer than you, mate.
That's Sam Moore. Moore, is it? Sam Moore. And
have you never looked at his stuff? Yeah, okay.
No, and I looked at it on Instagram and I followed him, and I hadn't even been following him on Instagram, which I found really weird.
Okay, yep.
It kind of looked familiar, like I've seen the photos, but I wasn't following him. So I followed him on Instagram. Then I found out he's got a podcast and he's got a YouTube channel, and he apparently owns a Ferrari. Is that true?
He owns an F40.
He owns an F40.
His family is insanely wealthy. Sold a business. I can't remember what it was.
Okay.
And as part of that, he went out and bought himself a blue F40.
Yeah.
He's good mates with Shmi, and
Oh, really?
I think he went to school with Shmi and stuff like that. I think he's a photographer, but this is going to sound really weird and quite judgy, but he strikes me as being a bit more grounded than some of the kind of other sort of classic kind of YouTubers, even though he's obviously stupidly rich. But look, I gravitate towards him because he has a blue 997.2 GT3 RS. So he's kind of, put up some content, and I quite liked the insight, and I kind of agreed with some of his observations.
I'll look at it more. I'll look into it more, and I might listen to another podcast. I'll tell you what I thought about the podcast. I'll tell you the good things first. I thought, the episode that I think the listeners should listen to, if they haven't come across this podcast before, it's called Car Chat Podcast, right?
Yep.
Car Chat Podcast.
Yep. Yes,
you should have a listen to it, and you should listen to the one that has Alex from Sharkworks, who's the owner of Sharkworks, who is English, and I never knew he was English before, which is very weird, but he's actually originally from the UK. And have a listen to that episode. It's really, really interesting. He talks about the GT4, he talks about GT3s, he talks about problems with GT4s, he talks about the difference between a GT3, he talks about turbos because he was really into turbos. Doesn't he, Steve? He talks about talks about a lot of the car stuff.
He started out with turbos. Yep.
Yeah, I started listening to it on my exercise run late today. I almost turned it off because I found it really slow. I have to say, at the beginning, I found it really, really slow to get into it. But then when he started talking and he was doing most of the talking, it was pretty interesting. So I would say definitely take a listen to it. The thing that I found interesting, Steve, and this is probably relevant to Marco, I didn't realize that the coolant line problem on the GT3 is also a problem on turbos.
Yeah, because it's a Metzger block. They're all Metzger engines.
Yeah, and then I felt like an idiot because then I thought when I'm walking, it's Metzger. But, I know we've mentioned this before, and I said, if you get a used GT3, but if you get a used Turbo 996 or Turbo 997 or GT2, you have to be aware of the fact that, your coolant lines will have to be replaced and pinned. Yeah,
look, that's my opinion of it. And it was interesting to hear Alex from Sharkworks, who I reckon, Rob Dickinson, the guy that started Singer, he's a Englishman as well. He's sort of like him without the swagger. I've read a lot of stuff from him. He seems like a really nice bloke and just pretty kind of down to earth. Anyway,
the Sharkworks guy was really interesting. One, I didn't know he had some kind of tech website and obviously sold it for a shitload of money. And then he said as soon as he sold it, he went and bought himself a 996 Turbo. And he's talking about...
And that's what kind of got him into it.
Yeah, in the 80s in London, around Sloane Square with Lamborghini, what was it, Countachs and Ferraris and 928. So he's kind of that era. But it was interesting. I thought it was really, really interesting. And I thought the thing about the 981 that he was talking about, people who are looking at buying a GT4 instead of a 911, how he said the 981 for sound is what you buy for the sound. Even though the 981 has issues, as he says, it's got that third gear issue, which I knew nothing about. It'd be really cool to get a 981 and do that pack that he does. I don't know how you would get that done in Australia, or I'm guessing there's people that do Sharkworks packs around the world or not. You know how you can do all the modifications?
I know people, they've got such a big reputation that I know people like from overseas ship cars to them and stuff, but I don't know if they literally will kind of sell, like they'll rebuild an engine and send the engine to Autohouse to get them to fit it. I guess I probably would for the right amount of money. But
because they have the pinning solution as well that they do for the...
They engineered
the pinning solution. So I don't know whether other people around the world can sell that. I mean, they did mention that someone from Hong Kong was sending a car to him. He did mention that.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting that the 981 for sound, the 718 for speed. What do you want? Do you want the speed or you want the sound? And I think as much as I like the 718, I would go for the sound. Yeah, I'd go with the 981. But if you could get a well-sorted 981 GT4 for not a lot of money, Steve... Do the Sharkworks, the new, like he said, he made that GT4 like an RS because there was never a GT4 RS, with the flywheel.
Yeah, the thing that they're most known for is the re-gear.
Yeah, the flywheel sort of as well, he said.
Some of the transmission, which I think is very dear. Like Matt Farah talks about it a lot, and I think it's right up there in terms of cost. But
it was interesting how he said the GT4, suspension-wise, he didn't touch it. It was really sorted. The balance and the suspension was sorted. He didn't have to mess with it at all, not like the 996s when he had to mess with them. He said it was sorted. So I thought that was interesting. But it was a good episode. I think the listeners, if you haven't heard it, go and take a listen. Steve was right. It is actually a good episode. Bear with it in the beginning. It's a bit slow when it starts, but there's a lot of good info in there, that's for sure.
I think maybe the difference too, I was kind of curious. I wasn't sure how you would if you'd find it interesting or not, but I think particularly for anybody that's got a GT3, whether it's 996 or 997, it's definitely it's like a 2.5 hour kind of ramble on GT3s, and there's a lot of interesting stuff in it.
But then I went off leaving that, and then as soon as I come back home, after the hour or so being out, I just went for a walk, didn't run today. As soon as I went back, I went on to car sales to see if there was any 997 GT3 RSs for sale, because Alex from Sharkworks is saying that's the best one. That guy's got one, it's the best one. And you think, the earliest GT3 RS for sale in Australia is on car sales is the 991.1. There's no 996s and there's no 997s.
Yeah, because there won't be that many of them. And the longer this kind of thing goes on, like, the latest release of the GT3 and everything, the more that they're going to be revered. They're just, they're obviously super kind of revered cars. They've got such a big reputation. It's only getting bigger. Like even that thing, we were going to talk about it a couple of weeks ago, but the little Top Gear YouTube video with Chris Harris where he's talking to that other dude.
Yeah.
And he nominates the 997.2 GT3 RS as the one 911 that he would choose if he could only have one. So,
See, I thought that was really interesting hearing that from Chris Harris. And I know we didn't mention it last week, but an interesting choice for him because he's owned two Tourings. He had that Touring that was written off, that he had the accident, not his fault. And then he bought a new Touring and then did the Topaz skin, as we've talked about. I thought he was going to say Touring because this is, if you could only have one 911, and he actually said the GT3 RS, 997.
I didn't find it that surprising.
Really?
Yeah. I think even...
if you could only have one,
Andrew Frankel. Yeah. Like heaps of kind of car journalists sort of say, like Andrew Frankel, who's just done, he's been doing that Intercooler thing, which is now an online magazine. It's really awesome. Go and have a look at it.
Yeah, you sent me that, and I haven't gone to it. I've never heard of it before either. And who is it again?
Andrew Frankel and Dan Prosser.
Remind me who Andrew Frankel is, because it sounds familiar and I can't remember who it is.
Old school English car journalist who worked on like everything, like Autocar and all that sort of stuff.
Because I know the name.
Good mates with Chris Harris.
Okay.
Knows his stuff, races cars. He recently, I think, pretty much said, pretty sure he said 997.2
Right.
as well is his pick for like the car.
But what is Intercooler? It's an app with articles like Medium where you read articles, or what actually is it?
It started out. It was called Drive Nation. It started out as an Instagram thing where they cleverly posted little journalistic stories within the 10 frames on Instagram. Really smart, because that was the first time I'd ever seen anybody kind of do that, and I followed it avidly. Then they did a podcast, which is actually also quite good. I'll admit that I never actually really liked Dan Prosser when he was a Evo journalist, but I've slowly kind of warmed to him.
I can't remember who he is.
And now, beginning of this week, they've launched a digital magazine, basically.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Which I've subscribed to, and it's really good.
The other thing which I thought was interesting, and we'll get off this topic now, but Alex at Shartworks saying that a turbo will always sound like a turbo. It's never going to sound like a GT3. It doesn't matter how much you do to the exhaust. Sorry, Marco. Yeah. It'll never sound like a GT3. It's always going to sound like a turbo. I thought that was interesting.
Yep. Yeah, it's true.
And then the thing of what he said about the GT2, that the GT2 is a car that you're not going to love on the first drive. It's live with it for a month and then you'll understand it, but you're not going to love that car when you first get into it and just drive it once or twice.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know why.
That probably have to get used to the speed, right? That'd be just so stupidly quick.
Yeah, true. Let's get onto the speed, actually, Steve. And I'll just tell the listeners, Steve and I do little notes here. Sometimes I'm not that proactive on it because this week I've been crazy. But Steve had the thing about his speed everything. And, it's interesting because we've kind of talked about this before, haven't we, Steve, in a little bit, with the 912 and the experience.
Sort of.
But I just want to flash back to owner stories. And it did come up in owner stories. And I thought it's kind of relevant, the speed is everything thing. For my situation, but when I was listening to Stephen telling his story to me, the other week, how the roads it's where you live, right? It's the roads that you have, it's the roads that you can enjoy, and it's the roads where you can get the most out of the car. And sometimes it's not about having the fastest 911. And as he said, that 911 that he had was good, but it obviously got a bit twitchy on times when he was driving it, and it could be a little bit too much to handle. Yep. And he decided to get a 912 because he wanted to experience a 912. He wants to drive it in Jersey, and he wants to enjoy it. And I think this is the thing. We all get hung up with speed because all these things coming out, whether it's electric car, whether it's a naturally aspirated car, whether it's a turbo car, it's all about 0 to 100, 0 to whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's all about this speed thing, like you said. And it's like, we've got to sort of step back and think, is it really, everything, and is it really that important?
Yeah, I think there's a dimension of it that is, but yes, you're dead right. Like listening to Stephen with his 912 kind of talk about it, it's like, oh yeah, I know exactly what he's sort of saying. I'd never quite thought about it that way. And I think somewhere in the podcast, he even mentioned that he prefers, for the same vintage, his 912 over like a corresponding six-cylinder 911 because there's less weight in the rear, so he feels like he can flog his 912 a little bit harder and it's more balanced. And it's like, oh, I never really thought about it like that. Look, I'm not the person to be talking 912s about because I have very little appreciation for it. It's probably just not really my thing, and I don't really have enough knowledge about it to kind of understand. But it was an interesting perspective.
Yeah, and can you imagine when it's so sorted by Andy Prill, when he has it so sorted, the experience would be pretty, I think it would be a pretty good experience. And, that's what I liked about Stephen.
I'm sure it would be.
Yeah, but like you said, that's what I liked about Stephen is that he had that blood orange 911 that was fast. You know what I mean? He's experienced it and he's decided, hang on, I couldn't enjoy that where I live. So, I get not the next best thing. You get something that you're going to enjoy. It's about the experience, isn't it? And it came up today, actually. It came up today when they were talking on that podcast. I don't want to keep referring back to the podcast, not an ad for that podcast, but where he said he was talking about the guy from Shartworks, Alex, asked Sam, how long does it take you before you can go for a proper drive in London? how far do you have to drive out? And he said, it's about an hour. He has to drive an hour before he can get onto roads. And, you think about where I am here in London at the moment, it would probably take about an hour before you get to open roads. And it's like, well, why do you got to think about the cars you buy have to be suited to the environment that you're in.
Yeah, true. Very true. I mean, so like this kind of weird sort of notion of is speed everything, there's many different kind of angles to it, because I also kind of pondered it. I think it sort of came up when Chris Harris reviewed the latest GT3, and because it's basically got the same engine, but it's got individual throttle bodies or whatever it is, as opposed to the last GT3, but it's effectively the same engine. It's a little bit, there's a little increase in horsepower, but he basically kind of said, yeah, look, 500 brake horsepower is pretty much all you need in a road car these days. Like anything beyond that, you just don't need it. So then, like, I guess that's kind of talking about McLaren 720Ss and all of that sort of stuff. And yes, you can kind of go faster, but, do you actually kind of need it? And is that what's kind of making your experience more fun or more enjoyable or whatever else? So because he kind of said that, I thought about my own sort of stuff. And I do remember, I must admit, when I had my 993, which was, I'd had it for 12 years, it was well sorted because I'd tinkered like crazy with it, suspension.
But not super
exhaust,
fast
blah, blah,
compared
blah.
to what you have now.
Yeah. No engine mods or anything like that. I tried a Steve Wong chip at some point. But I do remember kind of when it came to the point of letting it go, it was like, yeah, you know what? I kind of want something faster.
Yeah.
I do actually want something faster. And when I got in the GT3 and I test drove the black one for the first time, it's like, yeah, okay, cool. This is kind of it. Like, and it did make my 993 sort of feel redundant in terms of, like if you were really going to kind of hare around Sydney on some twisty roads or whatever else, you pretty much will get, wasted by, the latest Golf GTI even, or a Mini Cooper. So
comes back to the two-car Porsche garage, though, doesn't it? Would you have a 993 and your 997 GT3, or would you have the 997 GT3 you have now and get like a 992?
Yeah, it's just funny. So I don't know. Like maybe another kind of factor that
PDK as well for the city. You know what I mean? So you have a city Porsche 911 and you have your driving Porsche 911.
Yeah, like I'm sure most people can kind of relate to this, but I also sort of feel like in my particular kind of car history, every time you kind of buy, like I think I've pretty much always bought a car, the next one has always been faster than the previous one. So I have kind of, gone down that path. And the thing about it is that you drive the car for like a couple of weeks maybe, and after a while, you actually get used to it. You get accustomed to it, so it doesn't feel powerful anymore. I always, I felt that about my 1M. The GT3 that I currently have, I probably feel like that too. It's like, oh yeah, I know it's quick, but it doesn't necessarily feel that quick.
But it's like coming from the Audi to my 911. The 911 felt so fast, but I don't think it feels that fast now. I mean, there's power there, but it doesn't feel, super fast.
And so this is why, McLaren releases a 720S, because everybody keeps
wanting more,
chasing this particular sort of thing. But
where does it stop?
Exactly. So, and people at the moment, like in a lot of the automotive sort of journalism that I sort of read, keep talking about peak car. When is or was peak car, where the sort of the experience of like that you're kind of chasing, and I think that's coming back to sort of 997.2 GT3 RS. That's where a lot of people are kind of landing. And look, for me, for example, like I just sort of said, my GT3, I know it's quick, and I still get like tons of thrills, like even with all the mods that I've done. But so I don't have an itch to kind of go faster at all.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I need more power, but having said that, I've never driven a 991.2 GT3 in a manual, and if I did, would I kind of go, oh wow, like my GT3 feels slow, I really want this?
Maybe. I wonder though how it would feel for you though if there will be an opportunity where you could drive a 997 GT3 RS. and then see how that feels, to see if the difference.
Highly unlikely.
But you know what I mean? Like, it'd be interesting to know the difference. You know, listening to that podcast today, it's like there's quite a big difference from a GT3 to a GT3 RS.
I don't think it's massive.
No?
Maybe from my car to a point 0.2 GT3 RS probably would feel different enough, but I don't think, like, when you read sort of Renless forums with just a 0.1 from a GT3 to a 0.1 RS, there's not enough of a difference to kind of, you know, make it worthwhile.
Yeah. And then the other thing I thought about when we're talking about is speed everything, and I just want to refer back to last week's owner stories, the one before this week, Scott, who who actually sold his turbo and sold his Cayman and bought a GT2, a 996 GT2. And I hope Scott doesn't mind me mentioning this on the podcast. But I sent him a message, and I think I just said, how's it feel, you know? And he said, and I'm going to sort of read what he wrote to me. He said, big power and two-wheel drive make it a car you have to pay attention to. I think this one has DJ Markski tune on it. I don't know if you know what that is, Steve. And he said, I spun...
Say again, DJ...
Markski.
No.
DJ Markski tune on it. He said, I spun out on the first 5 mile drive because I was not paying attention.
Bloody hell. Wow.
Might need to get professional instruction. So...
Shut his pants then.
you know, it's exciting and it's a great looking car, and I'm really excited for him. I think, you know, he's so passionate and it's a great car, but like reading that, it's like, just shows you, you know, you have to have your wits about you. You can't, you know, he's coming from the 996 turbo, and then he jumps into the, you know, GT2, and it's like completely different because I guess you're so used to what you've been driving, and then you're in this other car, which is so much more powerful, you know?
Yeah.
So much more power and so much more speed, and, you know, and can be a little bit twitchy, I guess, if you're not careful.
And part of this is speed everything thing is, like I sort of said before, I kind of thought about Marco and his Speed Yellow 996 Turbo. It's like, I'm going to be quite curious as to see how long is it going to take him before he gets, you know, really accustomed to the speed, and, you know, it doesn't feel quick to him anymore. Because from the passenger seat, that thing felt stupid quick. Like, we talked about it again the other day, and I just sort of said to him, surely there's a tune on this because it's kind of tweaked in pretty much every other area, so there must be a chip in there somewhere.
How can you tell if there's a tune,
obviously
though?
Doesn't know.
Sorry, Steve. Can AutoHouse pick that up? Can they do check the ECU?
I guess so. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. I reckon it would just take for somebody who knows, like, and one of the guys there will know what a standard turbo feels like and jumping in that car, but from the passenger seat, it felt dumb quick.
Really? Maybe that's just normal, though.
Yeah.
I don't know. If it had I would probably put it back to normal, though, for me. I think I'd want it back to normal. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, you know, and is speed everything again, too. Like, with those 996 turbos, they've got a massive reputation for being, you know, tunable, like in the ilk of, like, JDM, like Japanese kind of cars.
Well.
Yeah. Just like, you know, like a Skyline or whatever. You know, you don't really buy a Skyline to kind of keep it standard. Like, 996 Turbo is built to kind of be tuned. So whether or not you kind of fall into the hole of kind of starting to chase power just because you can, because it's fun.
It's tricky, though, isn't it? It is tricky with this speed thing, though, Steve. Don't you think? I mean, because everyone's trying to sell you to get the biggest thing, the best thing, you know? You buy a base Carrera, it's like, why don't you buy the Carrera S? It's a status thing too. Like we just thought about the 992, Steve. You know, I'm guessing the 992 base Carrera is a fantastic car. You know, a 992 base Carrera in manual is probably a really fantastic car. It's probably fast enough. You know what I mean? But we always feel like we need to have the S or the turbo or the 4S or, you know, it's this hierarchy, isn't it? It's also that. It's also the status side of it. And I think you have to sort of move
a little bit, yeah. I guess it depends on your point of view. But yeah, like, you know, the speed thing. So, like, sheer speed in terms of the physical kind of pace and, you know, your 0 to 100 time, or how quick you can kind of go around a bend if you're sort of chasing somebody, you know, down the national park. It's obviously not about that. Like, there's a very obvious answer, which is no, it's not just about that, because when you start taking into account like the kind of sound experience and like how well it handles and
Well,
you
yeah.
know, like can you feel stuff through the steering wheel and stuff like that. There's so much more to the kind of experience.
Yeah.
Like you might be kind of going, the thing I love about my car is that I think, you know, even if I'm kind of doing about 70 or 80, it still feels quick and fun and, you know, really, really quite exciting. I was saying to my uncle,
Yep. Go ahead.
I was saying to my uncle, like, who didn't drive his own 991.2 on the weekend drive, oh, you should have taken it for a drive. You know, you should have come with us as opposed to being a passenger. I bet you his car would have been quicker than either of us down that same bit of road because it's newer and more competent and, you know, like more able to kind of handle the bumps and stuff like that. But I bet you, for me personally, if I was in that car driving versus my car or Marco's car, I bet you I would have been having more fun in mine.
Yeah.
Or
No,
Marco's.
there's no doubt about it. Your car is an experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It feels
Yeah, yeah.
completely, as a passenger, it feels like an experience. When you drive it, it feels so much more as an experience. It feels, obviously, it's much more of an experience than my car. You know what I mean? And I'm not putting
Yeah,
down
sure.
my car. You know, when I got my car, like it
Yeah,
feels
yeah,
good.
yeah.
And when I'm driving it, but, you know, going into your car, then going back to my car, it's like, you know, it's just not even close. It's not even close to the same feeling. It's a different feeling altogether. And like I said to you after that drive that day, you know, whether it was the
Yep.
seats or whether it was the numeric shifter, but it's just the way you sit in the car. It just makes you feel different. It almost gives you confidence. I don't know
Yeah.
why. In a way, it gives you feel like more confident in it, which is a bit of a worry as well because it is faster.
No, that's a good thing because it is, and you know, like I'm pretty sure when you hopped in my car up Putty Road, and I pretty much sort of said to you, drive it hard, don't brake for the corners, like see how fast you can kind of go through a sweeping bend, and it's just sort of ridiculous. And look, that does go back to kind of speed to a degree because you're kind of going, yeah, like a lot of the thrills is to sort of see how quick you can go in it,
But even when I'm following you, I can see that you're taking corners faster than me. You do. You take corners faster than me. When
Because I
we're
can.
driving, because it's sticky and you can
Yeah.
and you know
Yeah.
we're pretty close. You know I can keep up with you. But then at some points when it gets very twisty, your car is so much faster through those corners. It's so much
Yeah,
faster.
of course.
And that could be
Of
due to
course.
your
And
confidence in driving, but I think it's because it is so sticky. You know.
a lot of it is the car. It's sort of why I was curious to see with Marco's car in terms of the sort of speed difference, like through twisties. But yeah, we didn't quite kind of get there. But I'm still curious to sort of see how that kind of comes.
I wonder, is he going to put Cup 2s on his car? Put really sticky tires on it?
I reckon it's going to be new. To be honest, he won't mind me saying this, I don't think. The tyres on his car are quite old.
Oh, really?
So I reckon it will be up for a new set of tyres at some point. Whether or not you kind of go Cup 2s or not, or just, you know, go for 4Ss if I was him.
I was thinking maybe I should get Cup 2 for my car, then I'll be faster.
Yeah, don't know about that, mate.
What else? Anything else?
Yeah, no, it's just interesting. Like, yeah, is sort of speed everything? Like, no, not necessarily. I think, you know, if you're in a Boxster kind of thing and you're enjoying all these other parts
Exactly.
to it, if it's quick enough, for sure. Like like that's obviously part of the deal. But then there is that bit that I think that's kind of in all of us, like enthusiasts, where you become accustomed to the speed. And then you kind of hanker for more. So
Yeah.
I don't know where that sort of level is, but I would be curious, as I sort of said, like me personally, I am probably actively avoiding it because I just know that it would never happen. But I suspect that if I got into a 991.2,
Manual.
which would be significantly quicker than my car,
Yeah.
I would hanker for the extra kind of speed.
Well,
But
and by all accounts, we've mentioned it before, you know, the opinion is a great GT3, that point two in manual.
oh yeah, it'd be brilliant.
It'd be a great
Absolutely
GT3.
brilliant.
Just get rid of those seat inserts.
Oh, with the horrible stripes. Yeah.
I saw a new GT3 for sale today. And the seat inserts on the new GT3 are so much nicer. The GT3 RS, where it's got like little perforation or something in the seat.
Oh,
and
it's sort of
pattern.
got the kind of coloured bits on the inside of the perforation.
Yeah, it's a little bit like the GT2 seats, I think, the GT2 RS seats. But it was really, unless it was a GT2 RS, but those seats are so much nicer. I don't know what Porsche were doing with those seats in that GT3 with that stripe.
Oh, I just think it's that kind of classic racy look that the Germans have, that sort of funny aesthetic where
Funny
when
style.
they decide to kind of be sporty.
Yeah.
when a German goes sporty, it sort of has a little bit of over the topness to it, for made up words.
I found a guy on YouTube actually, and I can't remember his name, but he's got a Spider. He's got the Spider, the new one, the 4.0, and he's done the switchable thing. Is it Carnule? Or I think he's done something on the exhaust.
Carnule, yep.
But what's really nice about his Spider is it's in GT Silver, black wheels, satin black wheels, and he's in Sweden. But he did the seats. The seats have got the same seat fabric as you, the 911R type seat inserts, because he's got the full lightweight buckets. God, it looks good in the Spider with the top off and those inserts.
Yeah.
It looks so good. He's just got the silver stitching inside with black interior, GT Silver, black wheels. On the back, it doesn't actually say 718 Spider. It just says Spider. I didn't even know you could get that in black. And then he's got the Porsche blacked out. Oh God, it really does look good. It really does. It really is a nice car. That car. I think that's a good second Porsche if you want a newer Porsche. I think you'd have a lot of fun in that car.
It's all about money, mate.
I know you want one.
Yeah, but so I've got to ask too.
Yes.
Who is currently winning the Spend Michael Barth's Money competition?
No one said anything.
Come on, somebody. Who? What have you done of late? And
I haven't done
whose
anything.
fault is it?
I haven't bought anything, Steve. I'm still sorting through other.
Okay, so
Nothing. I haven't even bought the
Theoretically?
book. I keep seeing pictures of the books that I want, like I said, and they're big. I haven't even bought. Here I am last. I haven't bought it yet. I haven't bought the Stuttgart Klassiker gear knob that Nick showed me. That one for the 997. I am going to buy that, but I haven't bought it yet. Because I buy it and I spend the money now, and it just sits here until I can go back to Sydney, which at the moment I'm not sure when that's going to be. So
yeah, sure.
but I will buy that. That's expensive. That's 350 quid. That seems like quite a lot.
Yep.
So, but there's plenty of other things. I'm
So
always
Nick's
looking.
winning.
I'm always looking. And like I said, the 912 still hasn't gone away. I know you're not a big fan, but it hasn't gone away.
Yeah, because in my little leaderboard competition thing, I'm assuming that's Ajmal and Nick, 912 Nick, and
I don't know.
some of the other kind of people.
I don't think people are buying much at the moment.
If they convince you to buy a 912, then they probably are going to get you to spend a fair bit of money, which is good. But I'm going to try to trump them by convincing you to get yourself into a GT3. I think I'll pretty much win if I can get you to buy a GT3.
I mean, 991.2 GT3 in manual, or a 997 GT3 RS, or a 991.1 GT3 RS.
Yes.
0.2 is obviously nicer, but a 0.2 is very expensive.
Yes.
They're tempting cars, but they're a lot of money. And for people that don't know how much they cost in Australia, they're close to 400. They're high 300s into 400s. So they're a lot. But
So that's how I'm going to win. Ajmal and Nick, you're going to have to get him to buy like multiple cars to beat me.
I noticed Ajmal at Flat Cap Driver. If you haven't been to Ajmal's channel, it's at Flat Cap Driver on YouTube. So go and check it out, and his Instagram. I noticed he put he was putting the white stickers on his car. I don't know whether you finished that, Ajmal. I haven't seen the pictures of it. Did you see that on his Instagram?
I saw the mock-up, yeah.
Yeah,
I was going to,
the one on the bonnet was a bit
suggest,
small, wasn't it?
No, I think depends where you put it. Because if you don't put it dead bang in the middle and you offset it, then it might not look out of proportion.
I always like the ones on the rear, on the engine bay, where it covers part of the, it's half and half on the rear fender on the engine, wherever they put it. I always like that. I just want to say, I did read something you sent me today, Steve, from that Intercooler. Before we go, that Intercooler app, was that Singer article. Was that from Intercooler?
Yeah, so Henry Catchpole wrote an article.
So he writes for Intercooler?
As to, yeah. He wrote an article as to, it was the first one that he'd sort of done for them, which is...
About the Singer.
What's it really like to drive a Singer?
Yeah, I completely forgot. and it sounds almost ridiculous when you read it now, that the Singer engine bay is leather.
Leather lined. Yeah.
Like when you read that, it's like, oh, that's right. It looks good, but it's an engine bay.
And it's quilted
It's
leather.
quilted leather.
It's not just,
Like,
it's trimmed.
did you really have to do that? I have to say, though, the Porsche of the week for me, the one that's been looking pretty amazing, and he's posted really good images of it, and, rocking up with Zuckerman to spikes or to their hanger or whatever.
Gunther Works.
Johnny Lieberman with that Gunther Works.
Yeah.
Gunther Works. I mean, I know it's, was it 750,000? I think he said it was, or 650,000. It's like, oh my God, it's a lot, but the stance of that car when he was in Malibu Cars and Coffee Place, and then when he was going into their hangar, and the pictures he's been putting on Instagram. I mean, if you haven't been to Johnny Lieberman's Instagram, go and have a look. But that Gunther Works is pretty.
It looks bloody cool.
It looks really cool, I have to say. It does look very cool.
Very, very different to a Singer, like in terms of it's a much more kind of... I don't know why everybody seems to kind of compare Singer and Gunther Works. Maybe because it's the same sort of money, but...
I don't know. Seeing that car, I kind of like it better. I don't know. I kind of like the look of it better. I don't know why. Is it a 9 because it's a 993?
No, just a different concept, isn't it? Because they're both obviously resto mod as such, because they've taken an old kind of model and done something with it. But it obviously the Gunther Works sort of looks more like something out of the future sort of thing. It looks more like a Porsche show car.
Yeah, true. Before we go, I just want to say, back onto the me spending money, Steve. So I was getting onto something with the Singer article, and you probably know where this is going.
Oh, well, you're going to buy a Singer.
So
everyone knows somebody's going to beat me.
All the listeners know how you're big on putting extra leather and extra carbon into your car. Yeah. Like, you bought so much carbon and so much leather. In fact, you influenced me to buy that leather parts. That from the UK here.
Yep.
So maybe you haven't gone far enough. Maybe you need to get your engine taken out, dropped, and do the leather lining on the engine bay. What do you think?
Yeah, don't be thinking so. It's an interesting article that Henry Catchpole wrote, because it's like, his point was basically like, it's just a little bit on the nose to kind of, line an engine bay with quilted leather. It's like, I kind of agree.
But if you're modding your own car, your 997, and you think, maybe I should do what Singer's doing, and maybe I should leather line my engine bay, you've gone too far. Stop.
Yeah. Confessions of a Steve, like I actually had pondered a little while ago whether or not I should get the roll cage wrapped in leather.
I like that, though. I think I would actually say, if you can get John to do that, a Pro Stitch, I would get the price on that.
It'll be thousands.
Because Singer do it, right? Singer do it, and Gunther Works. Do Gunther Works do it, or just Singer? Singer do, I know.
I don't know. Singer do it, yeah.
It looks nice, though. It does look nice.
It does look nice with the kind of stitching and all of that. It seems, again, same old conundrum with me, which is kind of messing with a motorsport product and sort of making it all, bespoke-ish, but...
I don't think it would cost that much, because it's not that much to cover. They're just roll cage. It's not that big, is it?
Can you, if John at Pro Stitch, if you're listening, he's probably falling off his he's probably falling off his chair. The amount of labour involved.
Get it? I think you should get it costed and think about it. I think that could be quite good. By the way, listeners should know that Steve took out his Pepita inserts, his 911R type Pepita inserts. You should put them back in. I think they're good. Yeah,
I changed the gear knob around. I put back my old kind of carbon shifter in it just for a change as well. I'm looking for things to do. I'm going through this period.
You want to buy something else, don't you? You want to spend money. You're the one that wants to spend money.
Yeah, but the competition's not about spending my money. It's about spending yours. So.
I have no money. My money's up in the clouds. All right.
That's okay.
Let's finish it, mate. Let's finish it for today.
All good.
I don't know how. I'd like to say let us know in the comments what you think, but it's a bit hard because there's no comments. But is speed everything? I think it gets to the point, and we didn't touch on the new GT3. I haven't watched the videos. Maybe we'll talk about that next week. We'll touch on that next week, Steve.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone's watched it. I don't think there's anything new that we can say about it. But
I only watched the Jay Leno one last night. I haven't actually watched them yet. I watched a bit of Carfection, and then I had to go away from it, so I didn't go back to it. But I watched Jay Leno, and I have to say, it sounded amazing.
Sounds cool.
Jay Leno looked really cool in it. He seemed to love it. I mean, he was basically saying it was perfect, right? They'd just done it perfect, basically.
He looked really short. You know, like when the tracking car was taken.
He looked like he was sitting really low in it.
Is that how I look? Because I am actually only quite
I
short.
don't know. I'll take a photo for
He
you.
looked like he could barely see over the windowsill.
He always looks like he's looking through contacts, so he's always like looking up like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It was a bit weird, but the sound of it was good. No doubt, you know, like even looking at the rear of it on the road and seeing it again, the wing's not that bad. Then the back looks okay, you know. Eventually you want one. You can't buy one, but eventually you want one.
I didn't send it to you, but I'm sure you would have seen it. Like I've seen it on quite a few Porsche Instagram accounts. There's a picture of a Shark Blue 992 sitting next to literally, I think it must be like a Miami Blue 991.2. Have you seen that picture?
How does it? No, I haven't. How does
I'll
it look?
dig it up. The 991 looks so much better.
Yeah,
I think.
It seems a lot of people are not keen on that Shark Blue. I've heard a lot of people say they don't like it.
Yeah, sorry, and I'm not comparing the blues. I'm obviously just kind of going, there were two blue cars that are similar hue.
Yeah.
And you just look at the actual, just the design of the car,
Yeah.
and the 991 does look better to me. But
It does look better. Huh.
yeah.
Interesting.
I'll
Send me
dig it
the
up and
image.
send it to you.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Cool.
We'll talk again
Cheers, mate.
next week.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I should always end by saying, you know, and I always assume that everyone who listens to the podcast has listened to it before, but I did actually get a message
still
from
here?
someone. No, I got a message from someone the other day that they said they listened to the first episode and it was like, you know, the episode 2 weeks ago.
Who the hell are you?
No, they enjoyed it. People enjoy it. People have been very generous. I have so many nice comments from people, and I have to say thank you to everyone because there really is a lot of great comments that come through, Steve. I don't send them all to you, but there are a lot of great comments. But anyway, if you don't know already, my name is Michael Barth. I'm in London, and Steve is in Sydney. Steve owns a GT3, as you probably heard us talking about, and I also own a 911, but not a GT3, just a 997 Carrera. Anyway, thanks,
That will
Steve.
change shortly because I'm going to win the competition.
Steve's going to spend my money.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah. That's it.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.